Welcome back to another video. We're debuting a midweek show this week. I'm delighted to be joined by regular guests Jason Murphy and Liam Tully. How are we, boys?
All good.
Yeah, all good. Good to see you boys again.
Yes, good to see you, boys. So, yeah, quickly, we'll get straight into this one. The clue is on the screen. Muhammad Mokaev to leave the UFC. That's the question on everybody's lips after his win over Manel Kape at UFC 304 at the weekend. It's been a bit of an interesting couple of days for him. Obviously, in the post-fight press conference, Dana White with one of his most savage lines of all time. The PFL are going to get a very good undefeated fighter, which it's rare. You know, we've all been UFC fans for a long time now. You don't often get, or even MMA or even sport fans, you rarely get the president of an organization out in somebody like that. But I'm going to quickly run through the facts and what we've seen so far, and I want your boys' opinion on it. So, it looked done. It looked like it was over. It looked like it was finished. It looked like Muhammad Mokaev was gone from the UFC in the immediate aftermath of 304 after his victory over Kape. Then afterwards, it doesn't look so much like he's gone now. So what we know is that the PFL don't have a flyweight division for a start. So this noise about him going to the PFL, it might not be as prominent as what's been said. He's came out flat out denied it. The interesting thing for me is manager Tim Simpson, who's a very prominent manager in MMA. Funnily enough, manages Leon Edwards and also Israel Adesanya, two of the biggest stars in sport today. He's not a guy who's going to be messing about around any negotiations or driving a lawsuit. You can't negotiate when you're in a contract directly with another organization. It's lawsuit city. Tim Simpson's a smart guy. I've watched many interviews with him, which I'm sure you guys have also. He ain't going to let that happen. So Mo's come out and said outright he wants Dana to re-sign him. He wants him to give him another chance. It's been pretty much radio silence from the UFC since then. Mo's been throwing some jibes around about the job center and all this kind of thing. You know, we've seen it. Jason Murphy, first off, give me your thoughts on what's transpired.
Yes, I mean, we've spoke off camera about it. It's just crazy. I think it's just really messy how it came out. You know, he had his best win to date, really, other than maybe the Tim Elliott win, you could say was maybe a more high profile in terms of, you know, well established in terms of opponents for his resume. The way it was handled was just really messy. I mean, I didn't like, you know, the way that Dana sort of threw him under a proverbial bus, basically. And it looks now that he threw him under a bus off the back of rumour and suggestion, because, you know, as you said, his manager, Tim, is a well-respected manager within MMA. You know, he's got some big names. He's got some up-and-coming talent as well. He's not going to put his client in a situation where he's not just cast aside by the UFC, but I don't think if he left like that, PFL would want him anyway, because, you know, he's proven to be disloyal. You know, I know everybody chases the money, but Dana did say, you know, he's free to go to the PFL. They're getting an undefeated fighter. And then, as you said, Mo's come out this week and said that's not true. I saw some screenshots that were allegedly from somebody that was well within the camp. You saw them, didn't you? Mm-hmm. That turns out to be complete and utter nonsense. And you can see that Mokaev he's upset by it. It looks like he's upset by it, and he's gutted. He's always said he wanted to be UFC champion. He wanted to be the youngest UFC champion, didn't he? I think it was him and Macy Barber came to the organisation around about the same time, around about the same age. It's not worked out well for either of them for different reasons, obviously. But he seems really, really gutted about it. He's sort of, I wouldn't say begging to be taken back, but he's certainly putting out some strongly worded tweets that basically say, look, you know, I don't want to leave. I want to be your organisation's champ. Can I come back? I just think it's been really messy.
Yeah, it certainly has. It's fascinating to see how it's going to pan out. What are your thoughts on it, Liam?
I agree with what Jason just said. It's a really messy situation. And everything Mokaev has been saying post the fight he's not quite begging, but he's saying, look, I want another chance. I still believe I can become one of your top 5, top 10 guys that everyone's talking about within the entire organisation. But for me, it does feel a bit like a guy who realises some of the mistakes he's made and some of his comments outside the octagon in terms of some of his fight week antics, sucker punching other fighters backstage, X, Y, and Z. And he's suddenly gone, what position am I in here? Like you say, the PFL doesn't have a flyweight division at the moment. So what is there for him outside of the UFC? Is it a case of he needs the UFC more than the UFC need him at this point in time? That's also likely. Yeah. Dana's comments came from a man that sounded pissed off on Sunday morning after the fight card. A man had enough, all the antics leading up to it, perhaps the fight card as well. He sounded like he was pissed off, which may have led to his comments. Yeah. And can you blame Dana, Hunter, and the rest of the UFC if they are fed up with him? So let's be honest. We said this on our review show. Who goes back to watch a Mokaev fight? I can't remember doing it. You guys both said the same. He's not delivering those highlight reel numbers that you pump out on social media that are engaging fans. He's a very good fighter, but when you add unattractive fights to all the other issues, it does make it look like he needs the UFC a lot more than they need him.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating over the next couple of days, and I think we'll probably get answers on this sooner rather than later. But before we type the video, I want a prediction from both of you. Will Muhammad Mokaev's next fight be in the UFC? We'll start with you, Jason.
Yes. I think they're negotiating in the background. I think the fact that the UFC and Dana has said absolutely nothing on it since, none of the socials. I don't think they've unfollowed him. At my last check, they hadn't unfollowed him, which they ordinarily do when a fighter leaves. They're really petty. Yeah, I think that Tim has enough, I wouldn't say pull, but I think he knows enough. I think he has enough people's direct mobile numbers to have the conversations with the right people to say, look, you've got a potential star here. I know that his fights are not the best to watch, but I think now he realizes that, listen, you're not the man. You're not Khabib. You're not Conor. You need to keep your mouth shut, fight, win, and let your wins do the talking for you. Stop giving it the big un before you've actually done anything within the organisation. So yeah, in summary, I think he will fight again next in the UFC.
Cool. Liam?
Yeah, I agree with Jason. I think his next fight will be in the UFC. I think Tim's going to have a big role to play in that. Almost convincing the UFC guys that that Muhammad can change, that he can start producing performances in the octagon. He can keep himself in check, I suppose, with how he behaves towards other fighters, how he acts, etc. And I think he'll be on a short lease as well. He will be told that, look, we are going to give you another chance, but if you carry on this level of behaviour, if your performances don't improve, then you are cut, and there'll be no begging or grace period where we'll come back to you. We will just cut you, and that'll be that.
It's interesting. I'll give my thoughts quickly. Dana White's come out and said that he's going to look pretty silly, and Dana does not like that if it all comes back round and Muhammad Mokaev fights in the UFC in his next fight. I'm not saying Dana wouldn't eat humble pie, because he would. We've seen it happen before with John Jones many times. Colby Covington he's had issues with. No one's bigger than the business. Dana will still do good business if there's good business to be had. A worry for Muhammad Mokaev that maybe the business side of it isn't there. But let us know in the comments, guys. Let us know, what do you think? Is Muhammad Mokaev's next fight going to be in the UFC? And hopefully over the next coming days, we'll have some news on that. So, yeah, that'll wrap it up for this one. Liam, Jason, thanks very much for coming on, guys. And we'll see everybody next time.
See you next time, boys.